Hello and welcome to another episode of the PubShorts podcast series, I guess live broadcast series. This is episode 76. It is titled The Logical Song. My name is Dr. KK and I'm the Innovation Officer at Trinca and Inago. And I have with me Tony, who is beaming because he's got the album, the record that we have pulled out the song from. Hi, Tony.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I've got such a big record collection. I've probably got most albums where these songs come from. So yes, so this is the logical song. This episode borrows its title from the 1979 song by Supertramp called "The Logical Song," which was from this particular record, "Breakfast in America." And this episode looks at the themes of questioning and clarity. The whole song about the logical song is somebody questioning himself and his relationships. So it's about questioning and clarity to AI-powered peer review tools, examining frameworks that aim to bring structure and insight back to scholarly evaluation, which I think is absolutely essential in terms of validating research. And as the composer of the song, Roger Hodgson, wrote in his lyric to the song, "The Logical Song," "Please tell me who I am." What we're going to talk about today is how AI systems can reveal the hidden logic of the scientific process. So there is logic to our titles.
There is indeed. There is logic to your name and your role that you serve as well, apparently.
Apparently. Yeah, apparently. Tell me who I am.
You are Tony O'Rourke. I think you should explain who you are better than I should.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I was just quoting a Supertramp lyric there again. So I'm Tony O'Rourke. I'm Vice President for Partnerships. And I look after our relationships with publishers and scientific societies in terms of how they're using AI and also how they're using our various editorial services here at Inago.
All right, Tony, are you ready for discussing?
Always.
So we have a bunch of songs, bunch of stories. We have a bunch of stories.
We'd like to have a bunch of songs.
All right, the first one is by the author of an article that we discussed in the previous episode. This story is titled "Sense Making with the SIFT Toolbox." So this is a toolbox created as part of a research project by Mike Caulfield. The project uses a lengthy instruction prompt to enhance LLMs, making them act more like research assistants. And this toolbox helps LLMs source conflicting perspectives and come to better conclusions. And it is designed for student researchers to aid in research while forming their own conclusions. And recent explorations include topics like Azar Gad's research, microplastics ingestion, and historical bread health claims. I mean, a lot of different things. What the main point of this is that Mike Caulfield has created this toolbox which can help generative AI and just say LLMs to be used in the context of research with higher accuracy, just like how one would need to use it for peer review assistance, for example.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this?
No, I'm still trying to get my head around it. If I'm honest.
Well,
no, again, it's Mike Caulfield written some really, really good pieces, and he clearly understands what good practice looks like and what good use looks like. And if only there was we could sort of expand that knowledge to the broader community as well. This is why we're trying to push this responsible AI movement quite aggressively, because we want there to be a better understanding of how AI can be used responsibly and intelligently within. Particularly within our space, scholarly publishing.
Right. I mean, the reason why I started the episode with this is that obviously this sort of I guess a toolbox which can be plugged into many of these models that you can that are listed here: Claude 3.7 Sonnet, Gemini, Flash, and ChatGPT. But eventually, it'll improve the quality of the outcome in the context of, let's say, a research case, like a student exploring the question and balancing the, let's say, pros and cons of an argument or something like that. But if you expand it, it can be used to improve the outputs for AI peer review assistance, something that we've been building, and the tool that we are building, the prototype of which has already won awards and recognized globally in conferences. And I'm thinking that if for improving the quality, we've already at a very good space in terms of the output responses and the amount of information that can help a peer reviewer do their job better. But this sort of a toolbox will hopefully improve that even further. So
yeah, absolutely, and it's very much the way a lot of these AI tools, particularly within publishing, are going to be developed. Is using toolboxes like this to really, really micro precision tune the prompts that have been created.
Right. And moving on to, there are a bunch of articles related to peer review and AI assistance and the context of AI. They are all research papers, most often preprints on archive. So this one is titled "Integrating Artificial Intelligence into Scholarly Peer Review: A Framework for Enhancing Efficiency and Quality." So it starts with the basic premise is that, there's a peer review crisis after all, in terms of increasing volumes of submissions
Yeah,
as well as decreasing reviewers, at least relative to that. And peer reviews are doing this voluntarily, and there are a lot of like historical perspectives to build up to the fact that AI, artificial intelligence, can be a very useful tool to, I mean, or rather, it can be used as a tool to support what the peer reviewers are doing to improve efficiency. And that is again the core principle behind the Inago, or our AI peer review assistant. And there's also mentions about how AI bans are not helpful, because eventually people are going to want to use it, or it's you cannot deny an entire group of, let's say, scholarly stakeholders the AI tool, because it's not mature enough. So eventually they're going to use it, but if you provide the right tool with the right quality, maybe they can use it and it'll be better for them. So
absolutely.
the most important sort of most the thing that stood out in the entire article is the mention of thin prompts and thick prompts. And apparently, I'll explain what these are. Thin prompts are the ones that eventually lead to poorer results, and if you use thicker prompts, you'll get better results. So, what are thin prompts, right? So, thin prompts are simple ad hoc instructions given to AI. So, for example, please review this manuscript, that rely entirely on the reviewer's own query wording and provide minimal context, often resulting in inconsistent or superficial feedback, as opposed to thick prompts, which are curated multi-level AI instructions tailored to a journal scope and policies. For example, a section-specific question set informed by consort or Prisma checklists that guide a reviewer through a detailed, structured interaction and reliable peer review drafting. So, this structured peer review is the core of our AI peer review assistant as well, and this is why we have used it. And thick prompting is basically another way of explaining how we can sort of deconstruct a very complex problem which requires human expertise into smaller problems which AI can, I guess, consistently and accurately assist the humans with. Right, Tony?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know one of the authors quite well, Richard Wynne,
Mm-hmm.
and he I don't know if you know KK, but a colleague and I gave a presentation at a recent conference in the US, the SSP conference,
Right.
on our peer review assistant tool, and Richard was in the audience. So clearly, this is a space that he's very involved with.
Mm.
His background is working with journal submission systems and how to make best use, how they can be really implemented.
Right.
So they provide state of the art services for authors, for publishers, for anyone engaged.
Yeah, there
So
is.
yeah, he's a very knowledgeable guy, and definitely if you're interested in kind of in how to engineer prompts, it's certainly worth reading the article.
Yeah, if at all you're listening in and you're wondering, the most important sort of learning from this, I would argue, is that the thickness of the prompts, or the richness of the context that you give a large language model. The more framework and structure you give it, the better the results would be. And especially
Yeah,
for research use cases, this is a very useful sort of information to have in terms of writing
yeah,
prompts.
yeah,
All
yeah,
right, moving on to the next research paper published in Archive. This is titled REMOR, Automated Peer Review Generation with LLM Reasoning and Multi-Objective Reinforcement Learning. So I guess people are already aware of what reinforcement learning is, but this takes it to another sort of level. So this one, again, it starts with some background as to why we need AI peer review assistance, but it discusses REMOR, an AI tool for generating peer reviews using reasoning and reinforcement learning. It aims to improve the depth of AI generated reviews, which are often generic, and the authors have developed a reward function aligned with human preferences to guide the AI. So Remor uses a dataset called Peer RT, which contains high quality reviews enriched with reasoning traces, and two models were trained: Remor H, that is here, and Remor U, which is a uniform reward. U stands for uniform, the other one is human aligned. And initial results show that Remor produces more substantial feedback than both human and existing AI generated reviews. Now, it is this is the first paper that I have seen where human reasoning has been given as reinforcement learning to help improve the peer review quality or the peer review assistance quality.
Mm.
What are
Mm.
your thoughts, Tony? This is the infographic that sort of helps you understand this, but we don't need to discuss this. What are your thoughts?
No, and we're going to see a lot more of these. I think reinforcement learning with human feedback, RLHF,
Mm-hmm.
is very much a 2025 thing. We're going to see a lot of tools being developed that uses this kind of a human reinforced training methodology,
Mm.
and whether it's for peer review, whether it's for editing services, whether it's for submission systems, we're going to see a lot of this.
So stepping behind a little, Tony, I mean, I know that you are in conversations with publishers and different stakeholders about some of the customized models, custom models that we have, which involve RLHF, right? And so,
Yeah.
what are the sort of pain points that such models uh, help reduce from a publisher point of view?
Well, I don't want to go. I don't want to dig too deeply into the
Mm.
technology. A, because I'll probably get it wrong, and
Mm-hmm.
B, there is some commercial sensitivity around this.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole point about using an AI-based editing tool that is that you've got something which hopefully will look and feel like another editor,
Mm-hmm.
look and feel like a human editor. And the skill, the trick, if there is one, is what you need to train the AI in order to get to that point. And it's very much an iterative process. So we've got some very large pilots underway with publishers in terms of how these tools may be used in conjunction with human feedback. There's always a human in the loop.
Right.
So yeah, it's. I mean, if there's one topic every publisher is talking about, is what can we do to reduce our costs
Mm-hmm.
and maintain, or if not increase the quality of what we produce,
Right.
and manage the increasing volume of submissions at the same time.
Right. If somebody from a publisher is listening to or watching this, where can they find more about such custom models?
Well, I haven't advertised it too widely yet, so I suggest if you have an interest in this, please contact me directly at tonio@anago.com.
Excellent. Moving on to the next research piece, which is again interesting, very, very interesting. I want your opinion on this, Tony. So, this paper is titled Language Models Surface the Unwritten Code of Science and Society. So, the authors propose using LLMs to reveal the unwritten codes in scientific peer review. LLMs are used to generate hypotheses about why some scientific papers score better, and the framework aims to expose the hidden rules in peer review. So some of the observations show that LLMs move from vague intrinsic properties to storytelling and contextualization when asked to do this. And human reviewers tend to reward storytelling implicitly despite not stating it explicitly. So that's another thing. I mean, a reviewer, human peer reviewer, as of now, without using AI assistance, tends to consider the quality of a research paper on the basis of the storytelling chops of the researchers or the researchers who have written it, which is a
Well, yeah, but that's very much a facet of the last 15, 20 years. It's not about the research, it's about how you tell the story and how effectively you share that story, and how much it resonates with the user, because there's a different story. The story can mean different things to different users. If LLMs can dig beyond the story to find the true essence of the research, then great, then why
right.
not? But I think the story is still going to be an important part of broader communication of research.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was overall very interesting. As in, there are biases within like human any our conversation right now is a biased conversation because of the experience that you and I
Yeah,
have had. So that also manifests in peer review. So in the sense that
absolutely.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it happens in human peer review.
yeah,
I don't have to go that far back in my publishing career
right,
to think of it. We were working in certain areas, let's say in physics, where there were two competing sort of research groups. One who thought, black was the answer. The other one who thought that white was the answer. And if you sent a paper that looked at the white technique to the black group, automatically they would get rejected because you knew they were working in a different area. So there's absolute bias.
so this
Always.
yeah,
And one of the things that publishers have been working very, very hard at, and we've been helping them as well, some of our AI tools, like anonymization, is removing or reducing at least
Hmm.
the amount of bias that could potentially be introduced in peer review in the submission process.
And from that context, this research is very interesting because it is training LLMs to identify human biases within peer review and to
Right,
magnify it
right,
so that we can learn more about it. Very sort of
yeah.
meta, and I'm very happy. So one of the reasons why we are developing the AI PRA is to actually decrease the human bias in the responses by providing the reviewers with as much sort of information from within the manuscript that they're reviewing, as well as the existing scientific literature, so that they know that even if they have a lacuna in terms of knowing a new development, the AI will find it for you. Find for them, that is, and eventually they can then improve the quality of the review, as well as then send it to the authors or the researchers, eventually improving the output quality or the research papers quality itself, which will eventually benefit the public. So there are pluses and minuses to everything, and AI in peer review should be the way to go. And this is one more reason how you can sort of with craft you can use AI to improve the existing state of the peer review itself.
I was just about to ask you what you thought the main takeaway from this paper is, and you just answered it perfectly.
Yeah, great. So we are moving on to the last I think the last main research paper. So this one is titled "Reviewing Scientific Papers for Critical Problems with Reasoning LLMs, Baseline Approaches and Automatic Evaluation." So again, it's a long read. If you're into AI and peer review, it's a good read. The focus of this paper is on using LLMs as quality checkers, not as full reviewers, and it introduces a baseline approach or several baseline approaches and an evaluation framework. And it uses withdrawn papers from archive for validation. The OpenAI O3 model show the best performance, and the paper aims to improve document-based reasoning in AI. So we have already discussed several types of AI methodology. I think this could be the first reasoning AI sort of related research that I've seen, and I'm happy that it is showing good results. Well, the one thing that is of interest that I noted here is that they have compared three types of inputs. One is a PDF attached to a ChatGPT sort of an interface. One is a PDF reading that a ChatGPT technology can do, or let's say OpenAI LLM can do, which is similar to OCR, optical character recognition. And finally, give the LaTeX sort of research papers are created using the LaTeX technology. So that as an input. So the good news is that regardless of the input or the way that you interact with the large language model, at least in this study, the output quality was pretty much the same, which is reassuring. Any thoughts,
Yes,
Tony?
no.
Okay.
Apart from the fact that um, these last three papers have talked about the use of AI within peer review, and I have you, and as I've mentioned many times, I've been going to quite a few conferences in the last few months. Particularly the last conference I attended, the SSP conference, the Society for Scholarly Publishing in the US, in Baltimore, in Maryland. There were so many sessions talking about the future of AI in peer review. I mean, you couldn't
Mhm.
go two lines down the program and saying, and yeah, here's another topic, here's another opportunity to talk about AI in peer review. It wasn't just us,
Right.
but it definitely is something which publishers are taking very seriously now. Lots of publishers interested in how these tools can be introduced, and I think papers like this with developed reasoning, addressing critical problems, I think will be hugely important
All right. So
for that thinking.
thanks, Tony, for that. And that brings us to the last main story. This is a very interesting thing from South African Journal of Science. It is a commentary paper. It is titled "Publishing as Knowledge Club's ASSAF Statement on the Recognition of Editors and Peer Reviewers." So, this new statement urges universities to formally recognize editors and reviewers in performance appraisals to
Yeah,
sustain credible scholarly publishing. Editors do more than filter articles that everybody knows, but they're not probably credited and rewarded accordingly. So these editors drive paradigm shifts and build knowledge clubs around journals as a living interactive document could do. And the conventional transmission model treats journals as static products, while as a knowledge club model views them as dynamic communities co-creating a meaning among editors, authors, and readers. And without formal recognition, incentive schemes, for example, like reviewer recognition, uh, currently the system generally rewards only the author's outputs. I mean, if you are looking at some one person who is getting rewarded the most, that'll be the author. We need to probably look beyond that, and overlooking the foundational work of editors and reviewers is being, we need to sort of stop that and reward them and recognize the work that they're doing. That is a main thesis of the paper. And
yeah,
one last thing, Tony, editors must balance community building with technical demands, outsourcing infrastructure that can help, but editorial leadership remains core to sustaining the knowledge clubs. Now, there are lots of points discussed here. I personally, I guess, resonated with the fact that reviewers and editors need more recognition, but also with the fact that journals should be considered as a club in terms of the discussion and discourse and eventually propagating information. It should be a live thing. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I've got two thoughts. First of all, there's constant discussion about the use, about the purpose of the journal, and the future of the journal, and journal clubs, regardless of their definition, have existed for years at either an institutional level or at an international level. So, fine, if it helps in terms of propagating or circulating material, then fantastic. Secondly, it's like this. I personally think this article is 15 years too late, in a sense, because there are already a number of products out there, services out there that publishers can use to reward contributors, reviewers, editors. I think of things like Publons, reviewer credits. There are others. These tools already exist. Perhaps they haven't been propagated quite as widely as that particular society. Hopefully they'll find out about them and use them, because you can find ways of reviewing. And we provide, Keiko, I'm sure you know this, we provide peer review services. We actually peer review content for publishers where required. We provide a service that will support that process, and we receive reward invitations all the time. So, thank you for your review, and as a gesture, we'd like to give you this, or offer you this, or provide you this training or this access. So those reward incentives are absolutely top of the thinking, or high in the thinking of publishers, so particularly the major publishers.
All right. So we're done with the main articles. Now we have some quick hits. The first one, it's a very positive one. The Nature Project to encourage early career researchers in peer review is working is the title. So in a nutshell, the article discusses the project and it is working. It discusses the benefits, progress, and outcomes of the initiative. And in the early results in the first 3 months, about 17% of the Nature's manuscripts involved early career researchers, and other Nature journals and publishers have reported similar successes. So it's a very good thing, Tony. I mean, early career researchers should be taken care of, especially from the context of peer review.
Absolutely.
Yet another
Absolutely
reason.
right.
Yet another reason why a peer review assistant workspace could probably provide them with the scaffolding or the framework to do high quality reviews, especially when they're starting off in their careers.
I was going to say exactly that. That's the whole point about our peer review workspace, the peer review assistant, is that you can provide that scaffolding, that framework to a new reviewer to be able to think about the sort of questions that you need to ask when you're reviewing a paper. I think it's suitable. And, reviewers, early career researchers want to be involved in the review process as early as possible, because that gets them involved in the community and it gives them insights, perhaps early insights into some of the upcoming developments within their space. So, yeah, I think it's a really positive step.
Right. We have a preprint related story from Europe, the European Union, the state of preprinting in Europe and the Netherlands. So researchers apparently are increasingly using preprint servers. That we know, but a global study shows a high preprint adoption. Global study shows high preprint adoption in North America and Europe, but less in Africa and Asia. In Europe, Tony, countries like Switzerland have high preprint adoption, while Southern and Eastern Europe lag behind. The Netherlands has a relatively high preprint adoption with notable differences among its universities. What do you think of it? As in, what do you think of the overall state of preprint servers in the context of global, especially focusing on Europe?
I think the preprint servers have never been in a healthy position. I mean, you're looking at, I know there have been a number of closures, and then I think in the last few years they've ceased having support. But I think in every major discipline, there is some kind of preprint service that exists. I mean, I mentioned this before, in areas like physics, for example, high energy physics, Cosmo and astroparticle physics. The archive, ARXIV, is the first and last thing a researcher looks at, at least it was. Right. In the life sciences and the biosciences, the medical, the bio preprints are, again, some of the most widely used tools out there. I did a little bit of research recently in terms of just to understand the size of the number of preprint services that are out there, and stumbled across something called the directory of the preprint server directory, and was absolutely staggered at how many preprint servers there actually were. Right. We're talking about high double figures. So it's clearly one where it's gaining traction
Hmm.
at a different rate
Hmm.
from sector to sector. But as these issues of quality are overcome, or perceptions of quality are overcome, I think you're going to see preprints becoming more and more important in the coming years.
Right, and in the same context, it is just like how we discussed the role of AI in terms of assisting submission volumes increasing in the context of peer review and editorial desk review. There needs to be more AI automation and screening related assistance given for the increasing preprint volume submission. Do you
Oh
agree?
no, yeah, I think what the world ignores is that it's not a case of a preprint server build it and they will come. There is a process behind all good preprint servers where they have to check
Hmm.
the content that's coming through, and I think what we will see is the use of more and more AI tools to support that.
Right. Okay, moving on to the second last quick hit, understanding the gender gap in peer review at Nature portfolio journals. It is I'll quickly summarize this. So this talks about gender gaps in peer review in Nature portfolio. Obviously, women are underrepresented as authors and reviewers, but the good news is that gender gap does not affect editorial and peer review outcomes. Women make up about 34% of the corresponding authors globally, and gender diversity can related to can lead to better research outcomes. I mean, that's like an opinion statement. So what do you think? I mean, we've talked about a bunch of stories related to the sort of, I guess, at least the gender disparity, at least in the first author, second author, corresponding author. We've also talked about whether it leads to, I mean, gender is a factor in creating biases in terms of editors preferring. Uh, First authors from the same gender in terms of accepting submissions. So this
Well,
is some positive
okay,
news. Yeah. Yeah.
it is. I mean, if a reviewer thinks like that, then if an editor thinks like that, in terms of I want to have a man that's going to review this paper because they will get a better review, then they should leave their job. They want to find the best reviewer for the
Yeah.
job. And I think to a certain extent, that gender disparity reflects also the gender disparity that exists within
Yeah.
research.
Yeah.
In certain subject areas, engineering, physics, for example, where it's got a lot better. These are still male dominated areas, which I'm not saying that's right, but it's just how it is.
Mm.
So the fact that it's a lower proportion doesn't surprise me. I hope it changes.
Mm.
But just if I can give an Inago plug for a second, one of the things that we do, as I mentioned this I think earlier on, is that we'll work with publishers to try and remove that kind of bias. So, and one of the things that publishers have introduced increasingly is anonymized peer review. Being politically incorrect for a second, it used to be referred to as double-blind peer review,
Mm-hmm.
anonymized peer review. So the author doesn't know who the reviewer is, the reviewer doesn't know who the author is.
Right.
All they have is an understanding of their skill set, and the skill sets that are required to review the papers are matched with the requirements for that particular paper.
Right.
And so we will help to identify anything that might reveal who the author is to the reviewer, in case there's any bias there. Of course, it occasionally can be, and equally remove that bias in terms of identifying good reviewers for the work.
Right. And how can they find more
And
about?
that's all available via Inago Reports, and part of Inago Reports has this thing called the anonymization API,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be used by publishers to really screen out and identify any text that might reveal who the author or reviewer is.
All right. And
And that's available at inago.com.
great, thanks, Tony. And that brings us to the last story, which will segue to my question related to you. So this is
Yeah.
from the Scholarly Kitchen. It is an article.
Yeah.
Ask the chefs, what did you take away from SSP's 2025 annual meeting? So the
Yeah.
author, some of them emphasize the perseverance amidst uncertainty at the conference. That uncertainty is probably related to the US-related, Trump-related executive orders vis-a-vis funding. Then some highlight the importance of science communication. Some
Yeah.
note publishers shift from whether and how to whether to integrate AI to how to integrate and when to integrate AI,
Yeah.
and
And
some
that's I beg your pardon. Sorry to interrupt you, Kate,
yeah.
but that was kind of the big difference between the conference, the SSP conference this year, and maybe let's say 2 years ago. It's not about whether; it's about how.
Right.
And when.
Right. So now let me just go to our big video scene and ask you. So you attended with a bunch of colleagues from Inago and Charlesworth. You attended the conference. So if I were to ask you what were your main takeaways from SSP 2025 annual meeting, what would your answer be?
I think it. Well, there were two main takeaways as far as I was concerned. I mean, you've already touched on it.
Yeah.
There was only really two topics of conversation at that meeting. There were other topics, of course, as well. But the two primary topics, the two things that people wanted actively to talk about, was the impact of Trump's policies on research and research funding. You know, everyone was talking about these cancellations that we're having at these large government departments, such as agriculture, as a result of uncertainty about future funding. And the other one was AI, and a big part of AI, as I mentioned earlier on, was around the use of peer review and the use of AI within peer review. There were other topics, of course, as well. But one of the really positive things about SSP, and I think it has about 1,000 people, maybe a bit more than that attends every year. And one of the really positive things about that conference is that it tries to look to the future, try not to predict, but to look at trends and how those trends might impact the sort of policies that publishers are implementing now, right. Whether it's AI, whether it's technology generally, whether it's governance, whether it's social responsibility. It has a quite unusually for a US conference, I found a nice broad international perspective.
Right. Did you have a conversation about The Wire?
I tried not to, because that was based in Baltimore, and I must admit I've been to Baltimore once before, and this was the second time I was there. I enjoyed it much more this time than I did last time.
All right.
Unfortunately, didn't find any record shops while I was there because I didn't have the time, but I made up for it at the weekend.
I know that you also consider that most of our listeners will also enjoy all the 75 previous episodes of PubShorts. So how can they find such content for their own entertainment?
Well, when you have a weekend free and you'd like to educate yourself on AI and the use of technology in scholarly communication, I urge you strongly to go to the PubShorts playlist, which you'll find on the Inago section of YouTube.
Yeah.
And there you'll be able to press share, like, and comment on or give suggestions on topics relating to the use of technology in scholarly communication.
Yes, and if you're watching this live on YouTube, because we also stream live, and if you want to send in comments or suggestions, I mean, we would even take questions. Tony can answer questions about Baltimore and Wire and Supertramp or publishing and AI, whatever you want him to answer.
I would rather you ask questions about publishing, but maybe you can write to me at tonyo@inago.com if you've got other questions.
Yes, and so that brings us to the end of episode 76, The Logical Song. So until the next time, this is Dr. KK signing off for Tony, as well as the team that helps support us to create such content. We will see you, Tony, in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.